Okay, again, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So lesson number 10, inshallah, the Quran, the unique book. We're going to talk about specifically what the Quran is. So first of all, you could say the scholarly definition of the Quran, or as a Muslim, what we have to believe in when we talk about the Quran. This is lesson 10. So Allah's words revealed in Arabic to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is very, very important to understand what this means. First of all, Allah's words. Okay, this is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa taala. So some people like the Mu'tazila and they had so many different groups and people in the past. They said no, this is the creation of this khalqullah. Anyways, there's a lot of different debates that happen in history, and we as Muslims, of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we believe that these are the words that were spoken by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we recite the Quran, these are actually, originally, these were words spoken by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they were revealed in Arabic. Okay, so they weren't in Hebrew, they weren't in English, they weren't in any other language. They were revealed in Arabic. And another point about this, sometimes when we give translations to people, we said, here's the Quran. Oh, here's the Quran. This is not the Quran. This is not the Mus'haf. Okay? The only Quran is in Arabic. That's it. Okay? The real manuscript is in Arabic. The translation of the meaning of the Quran, basically the translations that we give to people, this is a human work, and it's very, very important to recognize this. Because especially those who give da'wah, sometimes someone will come and they say, oh, you guys say that the Quran hasn't changed. There's no differences. And they'll bring you 3 different translations of the Quran. Or they'll bring you tafsir of the Quran. They'll say, see, look, this ayah, this is what it says. This verse, this is what it says. There's differences. That means the Quran is different. And we have to understand those translations, that's human work. And there could be human error. There could be, hold on 1 minute, please. So there could be an error that was made. The translator, the scholar, there's a chance there was a mistake, okay, in the translation. However, of course, the original work, which is in Arabic, right, the original words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are divine, and we're going to have ayat that talk about this, but there is no way that there's any mistake in Arabic, in the original Quran, okay? So it was revealed in Arabic to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is another thing that we have to, of course, believe in. And like some, Shia people, they have some groups, not all of them. Like I don't think the Ithna Sharia believe this, but so some say that Ali radiallahu an was supposed to get the Quran. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no, Jibril alayhi salam basically made a mistake. So these types of things that are out there, or ideas that are out there, of course they're totally false. We as Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we believe that this was of course given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah. I guess maybe when you're talking about da'wah, like a lot of people when you're giving out da'wah, they only say the English translation. Well, I think what you should do is maybe read the Arabic. So although they don't even understand it, because it actually affects something.
It could be possible, yes, because there is the miracle in the recitation of the Quran by itself. They say, I think I mentioned this too before, but Sheikh Abdul Basit, they said that Jamal Abdul Nasser, he had his own things. But one of the things that they said that he did, when he went to Russia, he would take a reciter with him. He would take, different people with him, diplomats with him. Sometimes he would take sheikhs or reciters. And one time he took Sheikh Abdul Basit and he recited the Quran in front of all the diplomats. And there were certain people who were crying. Okay, and they were Russian, they were non-Muslim, right? And they were crying when they heard the recitation, and they asked him afterwards that we noticed that you were crying, or you were affected. They said, we don't know what it is, but there was something powerful about those words that affected us. Okay, so it is a living miracle.
Brother,
and
did they become Muslim?
No.
They became Christian.
Yes, go ahead.
Brother, there was a story. It's like this. About the miracle of the Quran. It was recently, some guy, it was he tried to burn a crate full of Qur'ans, right? And it was he filmed it publicly, and then he lit the crates on fire, and then when they opened it, they were all Bibles.
Yeah. I heard of that. It was in New York, I think.
You're the one who told me this.
I don't know. I never told you that.
It was
And then
3 million Bibles. I heard the story before.
Okay.
But so is that like showing that the Quran it's like it can't
See,
be harmed or
No, because I don't believe that either. And
it
the
happened?
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect the book in a different way, but not necessarily each Quran is something. Like if like for example if like what you were saying would be true, look at all these there's a lot of musahif here and they're ripped and they're this and that. And that's our fault for not taking care of them
But
properly.
this guy, he was trying to prove that it can change and that he'll change it and that he's gonna burn the book of Allah and he's gonna prevail over it and then Allah wanted to. I don't know how to
If you
say
can
English.
find the
I don't
article
know
or
how to
something
say
or
English,
where you
but
found
Allah
that.
I've
wanted
heard
to
this story before.
Okay.
He wanted to
Yeah, brother.
in front of everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, embarrassing.
Yeah.
The guy that burned the famous guy.
Yeah.
He burned it.
Yeah.
Nothing happened.
Yeah, he got old copies basically from different places, and he burned it. And I mean, I'm not sure if it's true, but some people, I
Well,
think,
he
like,
hasn't met me yet.
some giving him old copies in here, burn them more. Right?
Brother, like,
Brother,
we don't have any prophets now.
Yeah.
So people expect that like a lightning bolt's gonna
Yeah.
come down on the
Yeah.
guy. No.
Something will, miracle will happen. Or yes, go ahead.
when you were talking about the translation of the Quran, Prophet said that like the Quran, like it can't be translated exactly.
Yeah.
Like the difference between the translation of the Quran and the Arabic Quran is like between like the sky and the earth.
Yeah,
There's a huge
it's
and there's
even-
sometimes mistakes in the
Yeah.
words. Like
Yeah.
I was reading in English. Like remember when you would put it here on the board, there were some mistakes in the words. Like they
Yeah.
would translate a word completely different.
Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anh, he learned Hebrew in like 17 days, like in a very, very short time, right? And he translated parts of the Quran to basically give the message to the other people or other, other Yahud and also other groups of people, right? Other languages and things. So he would translate parts of it. So one of the things, I mean, that is not Quran, of course. That is the translation. But anyways, now another thing about this, recitation is an act of worship. So if you read other books, you study knowledge, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you get rewarded for that, okay, for your intention of studying the deen. But you don't get rewarded for actually like each letter or anything like this. But with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for each letter you get 10 rewards. And it is a miracle by itself. And we're going to talk about that. What are some of the miracles in the Quran itself? Yes.
The same story about the burning of the Musaf. Maybe it's the same thing, maybe it's
Brothers,
different,
yeah.
but it's very, very similar. One guy tried to take a truckload of Quran to burn.
Mm-hmm.
And he got stopped by the police somehow or another, and they opened the truck and they found all the Bibles, and he got sent to jail.
Bibles? Or okay. I mean, it's possible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. First ayah that we're going to go over really quickly. Surah Al-Isra, ayah number 9. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ يَهْدِي لِلَّتِي هِيَ أَقْوَمُ وَيُبَشِّرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ الَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ أَجْرًا كَبِيرًا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed this Quran guides to that which is most suitable. Okay, aqwam. It's great. It's something, it teaches everyone the highest standards and the best morals. And it gives good tidings to the believers who do righteous deeds. Okay, that they will have a great reward. And so the reason why I'm going through these ayat is that the Quran, one of the best ways to understand the Quran is through the Quran itself. And so if you want to know what the Quran is, you look at different ayat to see what the Quran says about itself. Okay, and this ayah is one of them. That inna hadha al-Qur'ana yahdi lillati hiya aqwam. That it is something that guides. Okay, so this is one thing. It's huda lin-nas, like we talked about before. So this is the first thing, right? And of course, those who practice it and follow the teachings of the Quran, the believers who do righteous deeds, that they will have a great reward. Okay, in the hereafter, inshallah. In this dunya and the hereafter, inshallah. Surah Al-A'raf, ayah number 204. Just write the ayah number. Don't write the translation. You could look it up later. So 17:9. And the next one, Surah Al-A'raf, Surah number 7, ayah number 205 or 204. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنْصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when the Quran is being recited, and this is another thing that when we listen to the Quran, or if it's on in the car, it's on in the house, whatever, in other places, but especially when someone's reciting it out loud or live, then we should pay special attention to it. Yes.
But isn't it when somebody reads it on purpose because a lot of people are talking? Is that allowed?
No, this
So
is
other
not.
people wanna stay quiet?
Yeah, so this is not really a good thing if, for example, there's a room full of people and they're talking and someone just starts reciting Quran so everyone quiets down.
Oh,
It's not really.
Quran isn't a
Using
tool.
it.
It's not a
You're
tool for
using
you
Yeah.
to control people.
Yeah. So
you
it's
can't defend yourself by reading the Quran.
You can
No.
against specific things.
No,
Some
no,
kids-
I'm saying like some, it's like it's haram to hurt someone when they're reading the Quran. So it's
Say
not
that
like
to a Christian
if
will
someone
teach
is
you.
trying to hurt you and then you just pick up the Quran and start reading.
yeah, it's like mercy. Don't beat me up.
Well, there have been miracles like that. Like
Brother,
I
if
heard the
someone's
story
trying to
that
hurt you,
some
they don't
guy
care what you're doing.
he got
Hold on.
shot. Somebody shot at him, and he had a Quran over here in his pocket. Like I'm telling you what I heard. Trust me. And
Yeah,
then-
I heard that too. I heard that too.
And it hit the Quran,
Yeah.
and like it didn't kill him, and it saved him because he was reading from before.
Just someone might have a really thick coin here. And
There's no such thing unless you live in.
okay. But anyways, the point is, when you're the Quran is being recited for us as Muslims, we need to pay attention and try to take and like Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says over here, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ, that you might have some mercy. Okay. So we said it's huda, and we said now so far it's also mercy from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and we should pay attention to it. The next ayah, Surah Al-Furqan, ayah number 1, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي نَزَّلَ الْفُرْقَانَ عَلَىٰ عَبْدِهِ لِيَكُونَ لِلْعَالَمِينَ نَذِيرًا. So Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, blessed is he who sent down the criterion. So this is another name of the Quran. Okay, so Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, He said it's huda, and then He says it's rahmah. Okay, turhamun, la'allakum turhamun, that you might be able to get some mercy from it. And also, what's another purpose of the Quran? It's something that does farq. Okay, it's something that does tafriq, or it gets things separated from one another. Okay, so Furqan. So the Quran is also Furqan. Blessed is he who sent down the criterion, or the divider, the thing that divides, upon his servant, to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he may be to the worlds a warner. Okay, so to use the Quran as a nadhir, as a device, you could say, or something to warn other people about the akhirah with. Yes.
What surah is this again?
Surah Furqan, ayah number 1. Surah Al-Hijr, ayah number 9, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. So Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, He says, indeed it is He who has sent down the Quran al-dhikr. Okay, so this is another name for the Quran, al-dhikr. Okay, al-dhikr, it means the remembrance. The thing that is, we talked about this I think before when we were talking about the names of the Quran. The thing that you repeat it over, like when you make dhikr, you make adhkar, you repeat it over and over again, like subhanallah, 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 and so on. So also Quran is something to be reminded, to use as a reminder, and you use it over and over again. And from this verse, of course, like we were just talking about, this is one of the miracles of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, where He will protect it. Now He will protect it in very, very different ways. Maybe some of those stories that you guys have been saying are right. Allah knows best. Okay, but what the scholars understand what this means, this ayah means, is that its words, its meanings will be protected. Meaning, if someone was to destroy all the Musahaf in the world, okay, how would you be able to bring the Quran back? Yes, Hufad. Okay, you have a few people you have millions of people who have memorized the Quran, but you have in different areas, you have like 3, 4, or 5 people sit together, they start reciting the Quran, they help each other, and they can make write down the entire Quran again. Okay, and I think I said this story before. It was in one of the, I'm not sure which country it was, but they purposely were trying to publish a Quran that had mistakes in it. Kuwait. Okay.
It's not it's called Furqan. They call it Furqan.
Oh yeah.
It's this book that's messed up and they changed a lot.
And then they brought this kid.
And they brought a kid, and he was able to, basically find all the mistakes, and it was just burned like that. Okay? Yes.
Brother, what happened was in Mecca,
Brothers, listen up, please.
something that had to do with American stuff, American conspirators, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some guy
Abdul Karim.
in the factory where they print the Quran, they did a mistake. A group of Masahif.
Yeah.
Mistakes. So this guy wants to sit down, he read it like, there's a mistake in this.
Yeah.
You know what he told them? They took all the Mushafs in Medina and they burned it all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and they republish, of course, with the correct meaning and or the words.
Yeah, what if
No, then
somebody's-
they're not gonna
They
trust
have
them.
proof, right?
Yeah, they have proof, of course.
But I can use the bathroom.
Yes.
No, you can't.
Okay, questions in a few minutes. Quran versus, or I shouldn't say Quran versus Hadith Qudsi, but Quran and what's the difference basically between Quran and the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Hadith Qudsi. Okay, first of all, Hadith Qudsi are statements made by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, they're attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, the hadith, I just put it over here. Allah remembers us when we remember Him. About the people when the angels go around, and then I think we talked about that when we were talking about the blessings of knowledge, right? So the angels go around and they look for the circles of halaqat, basically of dhikr, or of people trying to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on. And then they have a long conversation with Allah. Remember, they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks them what is the purpose for them to sit there together, and so on, and then Allah forgives all the sins, so on. So that is an example of Hadith Qudsi, okay? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the words are being attributed to Him. That's one thing. Yes.
What is divine?
Another hadith Qudsi is قسمت الصلاة بيني وبين
Yeah.
عبدي.
Yeah, Jazakumullah khair. So about Surah Al-Fatiha, about how these ayat are between Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and the Prophet. And the slave and the servant. So okay, hold on. So let's move on. Just finish this. What it means. So Hadith an-Nabawi is the prophetic hadith. So these are words that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Okay, these are hadith or the words from his mouth. And so on. Hadith Qudsi, you could say, is divine type of wording. Okay, the wording comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but on the tongue of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another thing is that the Quran is from Allah in its wording and its meaning. The Quranic challenge doesn't apply to Hadith Qudsi. Okay.
Yeah, there are hadith that are mawdu'.
Yeah. So there's the protection. Allah will protect the Quran and the words and all these dhikr and so on. That only applies to the Quran itself, not Hadith Qudsi. Like Abdullah said, there are actually like fabricated hadith that are they claim to be Hadith Qudsi, and of course those are false. The recitation of the Quran is rewarding because 10 deeds for each letter. However, Hadith Qudsi, you wouldn't get rewarded for each letter. If you have an intention to gain knowledge, you'll get rewarded for that, but you will not get rewarded for each letter as you would from the Quran. Yes.
We're gonna have a
We're gonna go back on the
Yes, inshallah in January.
One more thing.
Okay, so I wanted to go over the main theme of the Quran. Inshallah, quickly, we have a lot of slides, so I want to go. This class is pretty short. We have 15 minutes.
Only two boys from high school, only me and Rayhan were the only ones that participated.
I think last year, yeah. Hopefully this year we'll have more. Yes. Main theme. Okay, so there is no intro. When you write a paragraph, you write an essay, you write a research paper, whatever, even a book. When you're writing that, the teachers, they always tell you to start with what? No.
Introduction.
Introduction. And then you have supporting details, right? You support what the introduction is, or the body of the paragraph, essay, whatever you want to call it. And then you have a conclusion. Now, the Quran is not a regular book. Okay, remember we said that this lesson is called the unique book, or the Quran, the unique book. So this is something totally different from anything else. And it's not going to follow this. If you open it, you're going to find an introduction, then you're going to find the explanation, then you're going to have a concluding, statement or something like of the thesis. It's not like that at all. It's totally different. Now, there's lots of different topics in the Quran. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about philosophy, right? He talks about historical events, science. It talks about hereafter, stories from the Quran, stories of the previous prophets, stories from, all these different things, okay? And for, I don't want to say it, like for a person who is a non-Muslim, okay, coming to the book, and they're reading it, they're like, this is jumbled together. For them, it doesn't really make sense. Because they're like, he's talking about Tawheed over here, and not Tawheed, but he's talking about the story of the Adam alayhi salam. Then he jumps to, the story of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he jumps back to, Ibrahim alayhi salam story. It's going like in all these different directions. It doesn't make sense. But see, one of the things we have to realize is the main subject of the Quran is man himself. Okay? And not only just man himself, but man's or our relationship with our Creator. Okay? Which is Tawheed. Right? To worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So this is, if you understand that this is the theme, and the main objective of the Quran is for someone to get guidance, for someone to understand what Tawheed is. Okay? To understand more about themselves. Then you start understanding why, this story comes and then in the middle of it, it stops and then another story starts or another thing starts and then it comes back to that story and then maybe 5 chapters later, the entire story is repeated again and then some more details are added and some are taken away. All of these different things that happen, then you start understanding that why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed it in this way. So his relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, as the creator, also the relationship with man, okay, with human beings and between each other, right? So we learn how to, the khuluq or the akhlaq of with each other, how we should deal with one another. So we learn this from this book as well. Only Allah deserves to be worshipped and do righteous deeds defined by Allah. So this is another important thing. That Tawheed, remember we said the main theme is Tawheed, that how man can worship his creator, and also that any good deed, it's only good if it's approved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a lot of people nowadays, they say, oh yeah, if you're Christian, you're Jew, you're Buddhist, you're Hindu, you're whatever, if you have a good intention, you have a good belief or whatever, you're going to Jannah. And that's not correct, right? In the Quran, it specifically mentions what are good deeds. If I make up my own good deed and I do a bid'ah, okay, I do an innovation, will I be rewarded for it? No. Okay? The scholars, they say there's 2 things you have to have for something to be a good deed to be accepted. You have to have an intention, and secondly, you have to have a good, or basically it has to be ittibā the sunnah, right? It has to follow the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes.
When you say defined by Allah, what does that mean?
What's defined, like the Quran, what the good deeds that Allah tells us about. Okay? Like He tells us what is good and what's not. And the purpose is to guide, it leaves out the extra details. So, like sometimes you'll find some stories in the Quran, and you read the story in the Bible, and there's a lot more detail, maybe.
Yeah, the names.
Okay? Yeah. And the town and this and that, all these different details that are given. There's no proof that it's actually there. But Allah, maybe it is true. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the purpose of the Quran is to guide people. So He gives you the dose that you need to be guided, and He leaves the other fluff out. Okay? It's only what you really, really need. Quran's uniqueness. So another thing, as I mentioned, it's the only book of its type. There's no introduction, and the topic itself is only for the Quran. There's nothing like it. Its literary style in Arabic is different than any other books. Remember I told you about my wife's professor, right? He was a non-Muslim Arab guy, a PhD, and when he was reading, he was like, this is from Allah. This is from Allah, from God, right? He didn't act upon it. He wasn't Muslim. It's very sad.
Because the guy,
Yeah.
He's Lebanese, right?
He was Lebanese.
He was Christian.
So, yes.
Oh.
So this literary style, if you study Arabic in detail and so on, you know it, and then that's one of the miracles of the Quran, right? If you study the grammar and the vocabulary that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses, and you realize that there could be no better way of explaining the book in your words than how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done it. Another thing is, as we said, the theme is unique, talking about Tawheed, talking about man and his relationship with his Creator and so on. Now this is another thing, preconceived notions hurt its understanding. Now what this means is, when you're studying a science, let's say you're studying what's the second subject you study in high school? Like you have biology and then you have chemistry, okay? And then you have physics, okay? Let's say if a person didn't study biology, okay, didn't study chemistry, and they all of a sudden jump to physics, and they don't have enough math or the background for math. Are they going to be able to benefit from physics?
No.
No. They're going to be lost, okay? Because they're not really used to those formulas and all the different things that you're going to really need in physics. So Quran though is the opposite. Preconceived notions. If you're coming to the Quran thinking a certain way, like for example, if you think that the Quran is just like the Bible, then you're not going to be able to understand the Quran. If you think the Quran is just like Harry Potter, okay, Harry Potter, Harry Potter, okay, so Harry the Potter. So if you think it's like this, then of course you're not going to understand it in the correct way. So this is very, very important to understand, that you have to kind of clear your mind of all the things when you're studying the Quran. Okay? When you study the Quran. Maybe. In the Indian version he did.
He put it over his head.
Yes. Okay, miracles of the Quran. So really quickly, inshallah, we have 9 minutes. So research, this is an assignment I'd like you to do. So you're going to research your own 3 miracles and where they're mentioned in the Quran. Okay? So
3 miracles?
any 3 miracles that are mentioned in the Quran, you find them and you research basically where they're mentioned. No, I'm going to make it due on Monday, inshallah. You have the weekend. Okay? Excuse me, guys. Mohammed, stop sucking up. Okay. So I'll give you some examples. The description of the womb. Okay, this is one of them, a very common one. The moon reflects the sun's light. Okay. This is something, of course, not known to science, and it was be impossible for the Prophet ﷺ to know about these details. And then each prophet, this is important now, so you have to take notes on this. So each prophet was given a miracle, okay? And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he was given a very, very special miracle. You could say called the living miracle, okay, which is the Quran. Because even after he passed away, it's still, everyone's reciting it, or a lot of people are reciting, millions of people are reciting the Quran. And so in this way, it's a living miracle. It's always going to be there until the Day of Judgment. Which one?
Splitting of the moon. They did researches and they found no.
Wrong.
That's from Apollo 11.
Wrong, we were
Can you go back?
Consider them miracles. We should just take what they are, and we shouldn't try to, like Harun Yahya, he does a great series, but sometimes what he does is he tries to stretch it a little bit. Like there's an ayah or something or hadith about something, and then he'll say, oh no, maybe it's this and maybe it's that, and all these different things.
During the Prophet's time, they also the book When the Moon Split. It's like they have it and they have like.
That book is just called that, but it's called
They actually have they have about when it happened, and I think it's a hadith narrated by somebody.
No, I know it happened.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it happened, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you see a crack on there and you say, "Oh no, that's from that time," yeah. Okay, so the main miracle given to the Prophet ﷺ was the Quran. For the other angels, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, the reason. Oh, prophets I meant. Okay. So the prophets, other prophets, Musa alayhi salam, for example, he was given you could say, the power of magic. And the reason why he was given this, you could say, miracle, was because at that time there was a lot of magicians. Okay? And sihr was very, very common. It was something that everyone was amazed about, everyone was talking about. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him with the staff to go and basically destroy all that magic and counter that. And then I forgot to mention the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Quran to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that was a miracle. And during the Prophet's time, literary science or literature, not the written literature, but the spoken word, basically poetry was the common thing at that time in Arabia. So the Quran was sent to, of course,
and no poet
get
could
that.
Take it.
Yeah, there was 7 poems that were mu'allaqat that were hung on the Kaaba, and the Quran, when it was revealed, different times, different ayat, they would actually literally go up there like, okay, I'm going to take this down now because that ayah just told you that this is gone. And until every one of those were taken down.
The last ayah used was the ayah in Surah Hud. That used to counter those.
Yeah. Do you know it? Okay. Which ayah number do you know?
No, but that ayah, because of how
the literary, yeah.
they took the rest of the
Yeah. Okay, Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he was given the ability or the miracle to cure the sick, and the reason why was because people were experts in medicine at that time, and so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him as a cure for those sicknesses and diseases and so on, so that he could counter those. And we just mentioned the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why he was given that miracle.
And brother,
Ayah 44. Okay,
wait, you said
hold on. Rehan first. Yes.
Didn't you also say before that Prophet Dawood, he was given the Psalms because at that time, like...
Yes. Okay, so Book of Psalms, Dawood alayhi salam, Zabur, he was given that. Why? Because this was another thing. At that time, it was like singing and music and that type of thing. And the Quran, I mean the Zabur, when it came, it was a beautiful, well, when Dawood alayhi salam would recite it, it was a very, very beautiful book. Okay, in the way they recited it. And so it was, of course, in praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but people, of course, went away from the music and other things when this came. Quranic challenge, so a few things really quickly. We're not talking about the game Quran challenge, if you've ever played that before.
there's a game called Quran.
Yes, there is. Okay, Surah Al-Isra, ayah number 88. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He challenged the Meccans and all the poets actually, that go and make a Quran like this. Basically, copy an entire Quran like this. Yes.
So yeah, his first problem, the Quran, he made a challenge in one surah.
Yeah.
He told him 10 ayahs and then one ayah.
Yeah.
And no one was...
I don't think the one ayah came, was it? Yeah, surah.
Yeah.
And then in Surah Al-Baqarah it mentions,
Surah Hud.
no, in 10.
Surah Hud, it
سورة
says,
هود أم
yesterday.
يقولون افتراه
Yeah. But there was another for one ayah, I don't think. Yeah. There was only 3 challenges. So you have the whole Quran, 10 surahs, and then 1 surah.
Yeah.
Okay? And the shortest surah is, of course, Surah Al-Kawthar, and they couldn't even copy or
They
try to
tried
make...
actually, they tried.
Well, that guy did. And he made a fool out of himself.
Did you hear his version? الفيل وما أدراك ما الفيل له
Yeah.
خرطوم طويل.
It's-
There's
Not yet. 1 minute. Okay, brothers. So people have tried to do this. Of course, they've always miserably failed. And no one till this day has ever able to imitate the literature or the high literature status of the Quran. Inshallah, tomorrow what we'll do is we'll talk. I'm going to actually test you tomorrow on, so you have to review those.
the one page.